Hi, I'm Jeremy, the Zoo Nerd, coming to you live from my backyard in Los Angeles, California. How's everybody doing today? I hope you're happy. I hope you're healthy. I hope you're being safe, being smart, staying home. Today we're going to talk about one of the most iconic animals in the world, the lions. This is Critter Chat number 36. Lions are recognizable around the world and often revered for their courage, their bravery, their strength. They've been called the king of the beast, the king of the jungle, and are often featured in a lot of symbols on things from money to statues in art, and throughout the history of people have really looked up to and respected lions. Lions are pretty unique in their social structure as far as cats go. Most other cats are solitary. Even people with house cats, the house cats don't always like to spend a lot of time interacting with each other or with the other people. Cats in general are more solitary or live by themselves for most of their time. Lions are an exception to that rule, although not always. There are sometimes lions by themselves, and some lions are very successful throughout their lives as solitary animals. Typically, male lions have one or two different time frames in life where they may be alone. But all lions start out in a family group called a pride. That is usually one or more males with one or more females and their cubs, and sometimes their older cubs as well. Sometimes those groups are huge. I think the biggest one ever recorded was over 40 individuals. Some lion prides have been known to have four adult males. I think there's one case where it's been 5. So it can be quite a few lions living together. In places where the environment's a little more harsh, or where there are maybe not as many food items available, more competition, maybe they're living in an area closer to more people, sometimes the pride structure doesn't work as well. And sometimes they live in a very loose associated pride where they may not spend much time together. Sometimes it's only a pair of lions, one male, one female. And some of those are kind of against what we think of as the normal, but it works for them. For lions, males are usually larger than the females by quite a bit. Usually upwards of like 100 pounds heavier. A male lion can stand between 3.5 to 4 feet tall at the shoulder. So that's a very big cat. Including their tail, they can be about 10 feet in length. Females usually a bit smaller. Males can weigh around 500 pounds, although most are closer to 400. Some in more desert or dry, hot areas would be more in the 300-pound range. And the females would kind of correspond depending on their environment, with females weighing usually between 250 to maybe 350 pounds. But they are very big cats. They are not, however, the biggest of cats. The biggest of cats that title belongs to a specific species of tiger called the Amur tiger, formerly called Siberian tiger. They are a bit bigger, taller, longer, and way more than the lions weigh. Also, the Bengal tigers that live in India and Bangladesh, they are about the same size as lions. So lions are good size, but there's a tiger that's the same size and a tiger that's bigger. Male lions typically live between 10 and 12 years of age. Females live a bit longer, between 12 and 14 years of age. In a zoo setting, they can live quite a bit longer, and I worked with a pair of lions at the Los Angeles Zoo that were both in their 20s, a male and a female. So in a zoo, they can live longer because they're not fighting or competing for resources with other lions or defending their food from other predators like hyenas or leopards or jackals and vultures. They're also not having to chase down their food to hunt, and they get medical care. So if they do get sick or injured, they can get medicine, they can get doctor visits, and all those things. Although they usually don't enjoy it too much. Typically with the lions, they live in like a grassland area, so area with lots of grass, maybe a few trees. Sometimes they'll live in a place where the grass and the trees meet, and they'll kind of do more of their hunting out in the grasslands and more of their resting, sleeping, and raising their kids in kind of the tree zones. They will sometimes also live in areas that are kind of more swampy, and sometimes areas that are really dry and hot, more desert-like conditions. Lions are pretty adaptable to a lot of areas, and I had learned early on that lions don't like water, they don't swim, but they have found some lions who live in areas where swimming is essential for their life, and they are very good swimmers when they need to be. So they are pretty good at adapting to their habitat. Now, lions historically lived in a lot of places. So today they kind of are limited to Africa, south of the Sahara Desert, and not in the rainforest section of West Africa. So East Africa and a bit of Southern Africa. And then one other small population that we'll talk more about in a minute that lives in India. There's a subspecies of lion over there called the Asian lions or Asiatic lions. We'll talk more about them in a bit. But lions used to live throughout most of Africa, including West Africa and North Africa where the desert is, and up in through Egypt, and even into areas of southern Europe and across big section of Asia all the way into East India. They also used to live in the Americas, although that was many thousands of years ago. They lived in both North and South America. So lions historically have lived over a large portion of the planet. Today they're more limited to Africa, south of the Sahara. So with their pride structure, with their family group, the females usually live in that same territory and with that same pride their entire life. So they are born in that pride, they stay with their mom, they grow up to be adults in that pride, they have babies of their own, and they stay in that space. That is typical. So there's always exceptions, but they typically live in the same place. So if you think about it, the land, the territory, really kind of belongs to the females. And they are also somewhat more in charge than people sometimes give them credit for. The male lions kind of rotate through prides. So once they're born, they live in that pride for maybe a year or 2 years, and once they're big enough, their dad usually chases them off. And then they go and find a new territory to live in. They sometimes hang out with their brother or their half-brother or their cousins for a while. They sometimes will wander alone for a few years until they get a little bigger, a little stronger, and a little smarter, until they can challenge another male lion for his place in a different territory. So they usually move away. Sometimes as male lions get older, they get chased out of the pride by younger males coming in who are maybe stronger than they are, and they will sometimes be able to successfully regain control of a pride in another area that maybe had a weaker male or had lost its male, or they sometimes go on and live kind of lives as bachelors after that. It kind of depends on their health and their physical condition, and also if they're in a coalition, if they're in a group with their brothers or their half-brothers or cousins, they may be able to be a little more successful in maintaining control over a pride and over a territory. Now, lion cubs are typically born in isolation. So although they live in this big group setting, the mom, when she's about to give birth, will kind of go away from the rest of the group. She'll have her babies and she'll stay there for a week or sometimes even a little longer until the babies are getting a little bit bigger, and then she'll reintroduce them back to the rest of the pride. And she'll be strategic about it. If she has a sister or another adult female that she doesn't get along with very well, she may take more time aside with her cubs to make sure they're big and strong. Will also depend a little bit on her rank. If she's the top female, she'll move back a little sooner because she's kind of the boss of all the female lions, and they'll respect her, and they won't try to do anything sneaky or harmful to her cubs. Now the males sometimes are very involved in that, and sometimes they're not involved at all. It kind of depends on what their pride structure is, how big their territory is, and what else they have going on. If their territory is huge, one of the lion's main jobs is to patrol the borders of their territory. And so he will walk all the way around their territory, and he'll mark their territory with his poo and his pee, and he'll do that to kind of claim, hey, this is our space, it's taken. And during that time, he will also fight off any other lions that may be trying to come in, and also try to limit other predators in the area. So if he sees leopards or cheetahs or hyenas or African wild dogs, any of those guys, he'll try to kick them out of the space because they are competition for the food source. And so his main job is to kind of protect the space, and the female's main job is to kind of provide for the family. So she does most of the hunting with her sisters, maybe her cousins, and any of the other adult females that are around. Now, with lions being big carnivores anyway, and with them hunting in numbers, they are capable of eating much bigger food items than most other predators in Africa. They will typically go after the big, medium to large size animals. So that's going to be things like zebras, buffalo, the large antelope species, which would be things like kudu or eland or waterbuck. Occasionally they get very skilled, and if they have a big hunting group and if they're really hungry, they'll go after even bigger things. Lions have successfully killed things like giraffe and elephant, and occasionally things like hippos and rhinos that have really thick skin and are really hard to bring down. But it is possible, and lions have been able to do that. There was a lion researcher who came and spoke to us when I worked at the zoo in Phoenix, and he had specifically been studying lions in a very harsh deserty environment in Kenya. And in that space there had been a drought for a long time, and a lot of the animals that had lived there had either died off or moved to other areas. But there was a pair of lions that he was monitoring. So just one male, one female. They hadn't successfully had cubs for several years, so it was just the two of them. And they were experts at hunting giraffe. And they were really good at doing it. Because water was very limited, they waited near the one water hole that existed, and they kind of hid in the low-lying bushes. And then when the giraffes would bend down to get a drink, which if you've ever seen how a giraffe drinks, it has to get really low and slow and spread its legs really wide and then bend its head down. And when that happened, the lions would be waiting behind the giraffe. They'd rush up and jump on its back and tip it over, and then they were successful in hunting giraffes. But he said in the time that they were monitoring this pair of lions, they were killing a giraffe about every week to 10 days, and they would continue that process. They knew giraffes were still in the area, and they had perfected their ability to hunt them, and they would kind of continually kill and eat giraffes. So very successful at learning and growing and working together. All right, the wind is blowing my notes around today, so I need to just hold them for just a second, get back on to where I was talking about. So I wanted to talk a little bit about lion communication. We all know that lions roar. If you're lucky enough, you've heard that in like a video or a documentary. I have heard that in person, both in zoo settings and in the wild, and it is a fascinating sound. And when the first time I really heard zoo lions roar up close, I was at the zoo doing kind of some after work team meeting, team bonding kind of experiences, and we were near where the lions lived, but it was nighttime, so it was dark. It was a little scary time to be at the zoo. I was pretty new working there. And the lions started roaring, and I was amazed at how loud it was, because it was so loud, it felt that they were right there, and they were pretty close. but it almost shook the little tent that we were in having our team meeting, and it was pretty scary. Now, I've later worked with lions as a zookeeper, and I was in the same building with the lions when they roared, and it was so loud you could feel it in your chest. You could feel the sound resonating inside your chest, and it was phenomenal to be so close to such a powerful sound. Researchers have analyzed lion roars can be heard up to 5 miles away. That's pretty impressive sound for an animal to make. And it definitely helps to proclaim their territory. That's mostly what a roar is made for. And occasionally they will use it to kind of check in with the rest of the pride. If the male's over here, maybe he chased off some hyenas and the rest of the group is somewhere else, he's going to roar to them to kind of see where they are, and then use that sound location to kind of help find his way back. They do make some other vocal sounds too. The most notable is something that they call a chuff, which kind of sounds like the word sounds. It's kind of a very soft sound. Your pet house cat kind of makes similar sounds at times, but it's kind of a smaller, quieter sound that they'll use when they're close together to just kind of reassure or connect with each other. And I've seen that definitely in a zoo. I have not heard a chuff sound in the wild because I would need to have been very, very close to them, and that has not occurred in a chuff sound situation. Lions will also use scent marking. So I already mentioned that the males go around their territory and they'll scent mark with their pee and their poop that this is their homeland. But they also have scent glands in their paws, and when they mark their territory, they'll also scratch the dirt and kind of rough that up, and that activates the scent glands in their paws and leaves another kind of oily substance scent on the ground as well, and that will communicate to all the other predators, not just other lions, that there are lions in that space. Lions are definitely very territorial and will defend their territories from anything else that comes in. They will sometimes tolerate other predators if it's something like a cheetah that's very fast and active during the day when the lions are usually active at night. They will chase the cheetah. They will try to kill the cheetah if it's close and they see that opportunity. But a cheetah's way faster. They're not going to specifically try to chase it down or hunt the cheetah. But if they have the opportunity to get rid of it, they will. And same with the others, with leopards, with hyenas. Hyenas, they'll be a little more deliberate in going after, because they know that hyenas also become large in number groups and can steal food from lions. And vice versa. Lions will steal food from hyenas all the time. And also leopards, cheetahs, African wild dogs, any of those predators, lions will steal food from. So although lions seem like this king of the beast, they have definitely struggled in recent years with about a 40% decline in population over the last 20 years. In the last 100 years, it's been even a bigger decline than that. So they now number about 20,000 individuals in Africa. They used to live in almost every country in Africa, and now they only have populations in 26 of the countries in Africa. And they only have stable populations in about 6 to 8 of those countries. They're still kind of figuring out numbers on some of them. But lions face a lot of threats. They are a big predator. They need a lot of food. They live in big families. So there's a lot of mouths to feed. So one of their biggest threats is actually loss of prey species. And that happens when people move in. If people are raising things like goats and sheep and cows, those animals will sometimes eat all the grass, and then there's less food for things like zebras and antelope. Africa is also a very big place, a very wild place, and struggles with things like fires and droughts and floods, which can also impact the environment and cause problems for some of those prey species as well. Also, as the population of humans grows in Africa, there are other things that cause habitat loss. As people grow out from cities and start growing more crops, or as other countries start to kind of work with African countries to grow things in Africa that they then ship elsewhere, things like cotton, palm oil, different types of food, different types of wood are all grown in Africa now and then shipped across different places in the world where it is used by other countries. And all of that has its toll on the African wild animal populations as well. Disease that is spread by human societies is also a problem, specifically things like distemper, which can be a common disease in a cat or a dog. If people are living in Africa and have a dog that just kind of roams around and roams free and maybe finds other dogs and breeds with them and has more dogs, and dogs are starting to run around in different places, they can spread some of those diseases, and distemper is one that has specifically caused problems for lions in Africa. One of the other big threats is conflicts with humans. If you're raising cows or goats or sheep and something kills your animals in the night, you're going to be very upset about it. And if you then see a lion around the next day, you may blame the lion. It may not even be the lion who did it, but you might see the lion, think that that's the problem, and try to kill the lion. And poisoning is the biggest way that humans are retaliating against lions. Occasionally people have things like a gun, but it's not very common in Africa, but they can get poison. And poisoning lions usually causes problems for not only those lions, but also other species as well. If you poison a lion and the lion dies and there's a dead lion sitting there, other animals are still going to try to eat the lion. Things like vultures and jackals, and maybe even things like hyenas, may try to eat that carcass, and then all those animals get poisoned too. And it's a big problem in a lot of areas in Africa, retaliation from people who have suffered from a predator eating some of their animals, and then they poison a bunch of things, and it causes a chain reaction of a lot of predators and scavengers who die off. The final big threat for lions is poaching and trophy hunting. Although lions are not listed as endangered, they're listed as vulnerable. Some countries still allow hunting, and if somebody's willing to pay some big money, they're going to allow it even more. Even if it's illegal on their laws, they'll find a way to work around the laws. They'll bribe a government official. They'll do it illegally and then just move the dead lion out quickly. So trophy hunting is a huge problem with lions, and there has been kind of this uptick in also hunting and poaching lions for their claws and their teeth to make little bracelets and trinkets that people wear or put as decorations in their house. Those can be problems for a lot of lions as well. Now, we've talked mostly about the lions in Africa. I do want to talk a little bit about the population of lions that live in Asia. So they only live in a little place in India. It's actually a decent sized preserve, but it's in Western India, northwestern India. That's kind of more the drier part of the country of India. And it is called the Gir Forest. Now, I heard about Asian lions when I was a little kid. And when I first heard about them, it was estimated that they would be extinct very, very soon. I'm no longer a little kid, and they've actually done fairly well during my lifetime, to where their numbers, although they were down into like the 40 to 50 range, they now number about 250 animals, which is still not a lot, but it's a lot more than what it was. And the government in India is trying to really protect this group of lions, but they definitely have some threats and problems facing them. So to start off, let's talk a little bit about how they're different than African lions. For one, the males don't get as big and full of a mane in India as they do in Africa. The manes are typically darker and a little more sparse hair-wise. For two, all the lions in India actually have a little fold of skin that kind of runs across their belly, kind of from their chin all the way down to their tail. And it's kind of a little fold and causes like a wrinkle on their belly. And all the Asian lions have it, and none of the African lions do. And with that, that's kind of a first visual sign that, hey, this isn't quite the same species. And so currently they're listed as two subspecies of the lion. So that has given them extra special protection on an international level. and helped cause extra conservation efforts for the lions in India. They're also a little bit lighter weight, so they don't get as big, they don't get as tall, they don't get as heavy as the African lions, usually by between like 50 and 100 pounds lighter weight. And then the Asian lions, they don't typically live in big prides. Sometimes they don't live in a pride at all. The male lives separate and only comes near the females for breeding. The female may live with a sister and have their cubs together, but often their resources are pretty limited. So it may just be one mom with her babies and that's it. Typically the lions in Asia go after animals like wild boars, wild pigs, or deer are their two biggest species. There are occasionally some antelope that would be in that area that they could eat as well. And occasionally they'll go after smaller things if they have a hard time finding food. Now the area in India where these Asian lions live is a drier climate. So it's kind of very yellow colored grass, very almost dead looking trees that don't have a lot of leaves on them. There are some monkeys in the forest too, so they'll occasionally go after the monkeys. And that area of India is also prone to a lot of droughts and occasionally things like fires. And with the lions all being in one big national park preserved area, they worry that something like a big wildfire could wipe them out entirely. So the government of India is doing something where they're hoping to be able to create a second population of lions in another protected area. And so they're just kind of getting to that point, and it's another area that they have started to preserve and set up as kind of a national park. And it's not too far from the first one, but far enough that if there was a fire or something, there would be ability to hopefully keep one population safer if the other one got into trouble. The government of India has also worked very closely with the zoos in Europe to create a special breeding program for Asian lions. And I think I have some photos when I went to the zoo in Berlin in Germany of some Asian lions. They look almost like African lions. If it wasn't for the sign, I probably wouldn't have known the difference. But I'll try to put them up later today on the Facebook if I have a good photo. The Asian lions probably split from the African lions as a population about 100,000 years ago. And they were the lions that lived all the way over into Turkey and Greece and through much of that area kind of around the Middle East and Western Asia. But the European zoos are doing a good job of trying to breed the lions and raise awareness and send conservation funding to India to help support them, while the zoos in America are focused more on the African lions and doing a lot of good work in trying to help them. Now I want to talk a little bit about my experience with lions. They are a species that I have observed in the wild in Kenya, in Africa, and also I have worked with them as a zookeeper at the Los Angeles Zoo. So I want to talk a little bit about some of my experiences in working with lions. The first time I saw a lion in Kenya was the very first day we were there. We landed in the big city and then we flew out to the smaller conservancy where we were staying. We'd landed the plane, we loaded our luggage from the plane into the truck. There were 2 giraffes that were standing around looking very cautious. We drove past the giraffes, we went into the forest, we saw some monkeys and some antelope, and we'd maybe been past the giraffes for like 20 minutes, and we got a call from another driver on a CB, a walkie-talkie in the truck, to come back by the giraffes because there was a lion over there. And before we approached the lion, our driver explained to us how this was going to work. And he said, we need to be very quiet. We need to be very slow in our movement. We don't want to scare the lion or make the lion feel uncomfortable. Now the trucks we were in were Land Rovers. They were good-sized trucks, but it was a canvas roof. That means it's just cloth on a metal frame. The sides are completely open. So it's just open air. There's not windows, it's not a closed door. So there was definitely a possibility that the lion could come into the truck to us. I was a little scared, I won't lie. When we were driving up to the lion, he told us a little bit more about this lion in particular. He said this is a young male between 4 and 5 years old. He said to his knowledge, this lion did not belong to a pride. And from what the other driver had told him, this lion had a very full belly and had either eaten that morning or maybe something very big the night before. And as we approached the lion, it was asleep in the tall grass, and we got pretty close to it, maybe 20 feet or so from the edge of the truck to where the lion was. And we watched him for about 10, maybe 15 minutes. And then he woke up and he stretched because there were some birds around. And some of the birds in Africa, when they see potential danger, they make a lot of noise. One of those birds is kind of like a African version of a chicken called a guinea fowl. And there was a group of guinea fowl there, and they were squawking and making all kinds of noise. And between them and us being there watching the lion heard that and woke up. And he got up and he stretched like a house cat does. And then he walked towards us. And he got within 5 feet of our truck, to the point that if I looked out over the side, I could pretty much look down and see him pretty closely, pretty easily. He didn't seem fazed by us. This is a lion in a game park, a game reserve, where he sees big trucks all the time. And our driver assured us that if we were quiet and didn't make a lot of noise or sudden movements, we would be totally fine. And we were, which was very good relief to me. Now in that space, that's at Lewa Wildlife Conservancy. I talked a lot about them on Earth Day during our critter chat then. I saw lions 2 other times at Lewa. One was a mom with little tiny cubs, probably cubs of maybe a month old, if that. They were still nursing, so they were just itty bitty little guys. They still had spots all over them. Really cute. We saw them right at sunset, so I have some photos. I don't know if they're very good. That was also 10 years ago when cameras were not as good as cameras are now. But I'll try to post a photo of them as well. And then we saw some younger lions that were still kind of hanging out with their mom, and there was a boy and a girl. The boy lion was just starting to get his mane, so you could tell him apart from his sister. And the mom lions were off hunting, and the cubs had been kind of left in this tall grass, and they were very curious about where their mom was. And you could hear them kind of call out to her. And she was across the meadow. We could see like her tail flicking as she walked in the grass, but we never directly saw her. We went to another spot in Kenya called the Masai Mara, and there we saw lions 3 different times. We saw, or four different times, but one of them was the same place, so possibly the same lions. One we saw a female lion that had killed a zebra and was eating the zebra in the middle of the day. It was very hot. She was very angry, but she didn't want to move and let anybody have her zebra. We saw that same dead zebra the next morning with 2 lions on it. So possibly her and her sister or her other pride mate, or possibly 2 different lions from the same pride or a different territory even. We also saw a male lion that had stolen some food from the hyenas. We saw a lot of hyenas covered in blood early in the morning. They had killed a baby antelope called a topi. When we got to the lion, he didn't have very much blood on him, but he had what was left of the baby and he was eating it. And the hyenas were all kind of on the periphery. So he probably had stolen their food and was eating all of that and chased them away. As they would get a little closer, he'd get up and kind of move towards them and growl at them, but he always kept like one paw kind of on the little antelope meal that he was eating. And then we saw 2 male lions that were asleep in the sun. We got very close to them. It was remarkable to see how huge they were. And then later, I became a zookeeper. I worked with a pair of lions at the Los Angeles Zoo. The lions I worked with were older. They had moved to LA to retire. They had previously lived in Seattle at the Woodland Park Zoo. And they were absolutely amazing to work with and absolutely terrifying. If you saw the photos that I put up earlier on the Facebook or Instagram post, the photo of the female lion standing and staring at you, her name is Kalissa. She's actually older than the male lion there by about 6 months. So I believe they are 21 now. Maybe she's 21, he's still 20. I think his birthday's in May. so coming up. But they are a good old pair, and Hubert is so sweet to her. He, if she wants something, he'll back down. He'll let her have it. He won't try to challenge her for it. Calissa gets what Calissa wants. Every morning, though, as we would come in, we would first kind of go around the area we were working in for the day, check on all the animals. With the lions, they had the ability to be on their exhibit or in their night house, where they could sleep with in a building in shelter for if it was rainy or cold. So they could choose whether they wanted to be inside or outside. And they almost always slept outside and spent their night outside. So we would go around to the front of their exhibit where the public would see them to check on them first thing in the morning. And every morning as I did, I would try to be really quiet as I was walking up, because if they were asleep, then I could just watch them, make sure they were fine, and be good and on my way to go check on the other animals. But if they were awake, Calissa would run to the edge of the water and stop and stare at me and stare me down until I left the area. Every day I worked with her, she intimidated me. I have no doubt that if she had the ability, she would probably kill me. So we always followed very strict protocols for safety to never be in the same space with the lions. During my time as a zookeeper there, we had to do a medical exam on Hubert. As an older cat, he was starting to show some signs of his age, as all zoo animals do. Like I said, they were both in their 20s when I was taking care of them. And so we did a medical procedure where we gave Hubert some drugs that helped him to go to sleep. And then we had to pull him out of the night house where they could sleep if it was rainy or cold, and put him in a van and drive him up to the animal hospital at the zoo. And that was a very thrilling and a little unnerving experience, because we loaded him up onto like a stretcher and had to pick him up and carry him and put him in the van. And although he was unconscious with anesthetic drugs, it was still a little frightening to just know that you're in this exact same space with this lion. It was really rewarding and beneficial to have that little moment to share, where there wasn't a barrier between me and him. And luckily we were safe because of the drugs. And that wasn't an issue at all. But it was remarkable to be able to actually like touch him, because you could never do that otherwise. They respected you as the person who brought them food, but that was it where that ended. We couldn't ever pet them or touch them or have any interaction with them directly because of our own safety. But it was really great to work with lions. I have huge respect for them as a species. And it was amazing to see like how big their paws are. Their paws, Calissa's paw is about this size compared to my hand. Hubert's is about this big, and that's with the claws tucked in. When the claws come out, it would be definitely much bigger. Their claws can be about that long and super, super sharp. Yeah, so they are definitely a formidable predator. Their teeth, their canine teeth, their biggest teeth are about 2 inches in length, a little bit smaller than what a tiger has, but still very impressive and very cool to work with them. Our special shout out today is a amazing conservation organization. They are called the Ruaha Carnivore Project. They work in a big national park area and the surrounding communities in the country of Tanzania. That's just south of Kenya. Ruaha Carnivore Project really focuses on how to work with the local people and protect the carnivores. So they do a lot of mitigation or kind of acting in between. When a farmer loses a cow or a sheep or a goat, they try to help the farmers prevent that from happening again by helping provide guard dogs for them, or helping provide better fences to put those animals in at nighttime. They also do a lot of monitoring with camera traps that they set up throughout the villages and capture some really amazing photos of them, of the predators and other animals that come through the villages during the night. But they do some really great work. They're our special shout out today. I'll be posting some stuff featuring them later on today. That concludes our Critter Chat today. I hope you've enjoyed what I've shared with you about lions. More information will be uploaded later today on Facebook, and some photos also will be coming up on Instagram later today. But feel free to like, share, subscribe, and follow to any of the Zoo Nerd content. And until tomorrow, take care, have fun, be safe, be happy. See ya.